So let's start the next topic of the evolution, and in this we have in the previous class we have studies about the homologous and the analogous organs. Homologous organs are those organs which having originations are same but the function are different, and analogous means they having the different origin of the structure but the function is same. So some part of that is by this we came to know about the ancestors of the organisms, and it also helps to find out the evolution of the organism. We know that the genes and proteins which perform the function in the organisms, and in the diverse organism these genes and proteins are present. So we know that in all the organisms this is a composition of genes and protein which perform the functions, and it having a diverse in organism. So if the organisms having a common ancestor, that means if they having a common ancestor means that biochemical similarities, that means the similarities of the genes and the proteins, their biochemical similarities will be occur. So it will helps to find out the homologous or analogous organs. After that we see that animals which are existing in our surrounding, we know that man bred them and selected. What in the olden days when we see that the man one who tamed the plant, one who tamed the organisms, animals, and then they culture the plant. They gradually come to know select the plants to grow so that it gives a good or better production and the yield. So the man bred these selected plants and in their agriculture and horticulture to get the more and more production and get the quality product. Similarly in the animals they have selected the different organisms, different species, and the species which having a good production they cross them. So this is the man who did crossbreeding, or you can say the breed among the organism or breed the plants which having a quality product or which raise the production. So breeding programs. So this is the breeding programs which is done by the people in the olden days. They don't know exact the technique, but somehow by their they learn by their experiences. That means if they need to raise the yield, that means they have to select the quality organism or quality plants. So they breed the different breeds and create a new breed. That means if we see nowadays there are dogs having a proper breed, so when we cross them, so we get a new breeding. So similar thing they have done, they have taken the two species of wheat and they cross them and they get a better production out of that. So they create a new breed. So Hansani, Sharbati, these are all the breeds of the rice, and we can just cross them to give a quality production. So it took 100 of years. That means if a man did this by themselves, it took 100 of years. That means a man, they have searched it and found out. That means they need a quality product, they need a quality production, they want to raise the yield. So they have crossed themselves and they think about that, how to do this. Okay, so it took round about the 100 years a man needed to do this in the past. That means he took 100 years to create a new breed. But on the other hand, when it is done by the nature itself, when the nature will do the same changes, it took millions of years. So do you get me the point? That means the changes, the evolution which is occurred is a slow and gradual process which occurs and take place million of years. But if we did the same changes by manually by the human, it take less time. So this is to explain that when the nature done the same process, that means they create a new breeds, they form the new plants. So it took a million of years. Okay, so one of the example of natural selection which is occurred in the England in 1850. Okay, and that is one of the biggest example of to understand the evolution. During that in the 1850 in the England, before the industrialization, then what happened? That means on the tree there are the two kinds of moth were existing. One is the white wing moth and one is the second is the dark wing moth. And they found that before the industrialization, before that means in 1850, the population of the white moth was more on the tree as compared to the dark-winged moth. Okay, after that in 1920, after the industrialization, that means 1850, that is round about 60-70 years after, they found that after industrialization in 1920, the same observation was seen, that means instead of white winged moth, the more there is a population of more dark winged moth instead of white winged. Okay, so they were surprised that means before industrialization the population of white moth was more, and after the industrialization, that means almost 70 to 80 years, they found that the population of dark winged moth was more as compared to the white winged. Okay, so that means the proportion, that population was reversed. So they go through the reason behind it, why it was happened. Then they come to know that before the industrialization, the tree trunk, that means the tree trunks having the, before industrialization, the tree trunk is light on, tree trunk was there, and they found that because of this trunk color is as usual as a nature, and there is a growth of the lichens. Okay, and the lichens, the white lichens appear on it, due to which the white moth was not seen by the predator. Okay, at that time before industrialization, when there is no pollution and all, so that means the bark was there, that trunk was there, on the trunk there was a growth of the white lichens, and on the white lichens the white winged moth was not seen by the predator, only the dark moth or melanized moth was seen by the predator, and that's the reason the dark moth was killed by the predator and the more population of white moth. So that is an example of camouflage. That means when the organism color is somehow same to their background, so that is known as camouflage. But after the industrialization, what happened? Because of the pollution and the smoke and the soot, now the case was reversed. The background was get more darker, and due to which the background of the trunk get more darker, and due to which the white moth can easily visible on this dark tree trunk, so that the predators start eating the crow and the predators start eating this white winged moth instead of dark winged moth. Now the dark winged moth is camouflaged with the bark. Okay, so that was the reason, and it took around about 70 years. So that means the tree trunk, due to the smoke and smoke, the white winged moth was eaten by the predator and it cannot survive. Now the next thing is that the lichen is an indicator of the pollution. Okay, and before the industrialization there is no pollution, that means more lichen is grown on it, but after that there is a less or almost no lichen was existing on the tree trunk. After that the moth shows a camouflage, and when there is a mixed population means the white winged moth is also existing and the dark moth wing is also existing. The mixed moth, those who can better adapt, that means it is an example, one, the species can adapt better, can survive, and they increase their population size. So same conditions occur before industrialization. The population of white winged moth was more because it is better adapted, camouflage, survive and increase their population size. But on the other hand, after industrialization, the case was reversed. The dark winged moth was more as compared to white wing, and they better adapt and survive. But no variant is completely wiped out. That means this is an example that if population is maybe increase or decrease, but it never wipe out or disappears. Similarly, the excess use of herbicide. Nowadays we are using pesticides, herbicides and other chemicals, and the reason of this is to resist the varieties in the less time. That means we want to save our productions, we want to save our plants, we want to save our crops. So in the less time we want to resist our varieties. Similarly, the antibiotic and drugs which work against the eukaryotes organism, the resistance will take place in the months and years. So evolution by the anthropogenic action, that means it take a lot of time, is not a direct process. That means one, it has happened today and then after 5 years it will happen. So it's not a direct process, and it need a chance event on the nature. That means the stochastic process based on the chance event in the nature. That means by nature, when it is conditions appear or there is a chance of mutation, that mutations and the events in the nature which causes the changes or the evolution. Next is the adaptive radiation. the Darwin, one who just visited to the Galapagos Island, and what he found there, he found the Darwin, a black small bird in that island that is known as the finches. It was also known as Darwinian finches, and he found that finches are the conjectures. That means the variety of that same finches was there, but their habitat is quite different. So what they found that he evolved from the island itself, that there are the different finches are there. Some of them are the seed eating, some of them are vegetarian, some of them are insectivorous, and there is a variations in their beak because their food habit is different. So there is a shape of the beak is little bit varied. So this is also the process of evolution. Okay, so they found that the process of evolution, that means this Galapagos Island is isolated from the other island. That means no other species can come in that area. So that means whatever species was existing, that is in that isolated area. It was an isolated area. That means no other species was formed there. Okay, after that they found that Darwin found that this is an isolated species, isolated area, and in that isolated area there is no chance of any other birds to come from other area. So that means the finches are the self-conjectured there, and they form, and the process of evolution of different species in the given geographical area. That means from the same finches, because only the single finch was there, and because of the competition, because of the lack of resources, they have adapted themselves. Some of them are start eating the seeds, some of them are start eating the insectivorous, and there is a variations to the surrounding. So the process of evolution of different species in the given geographical area, starting from the point and literally retreating to the other area of the geography, is called the adaptive gradation. That means it is arising here. Process of evolution of different species. There are a variety of finches are giving in the given geographical area, starting from a point literally. That means it is started from that Galapagos Islands and then start radiating to the other area of the geographical. That means mostly they lived on the branches of the tree. Similarly, because of the population and the competition, some of them are living near the sea, some of them are living near the water, some of them are living on the trunk, some of them are living on the ground. Okay, so that means the process of evolution of different species in a given geographical area is starting from a common point and then literally radiating to the other areas called the adaptive radiation. The example of that is finches. Second one is the marsupial, Australian marsupials. They are having different from each other. If you see that different marsupial organisms, it is given in your book also. That means the tiger cat, branded anteater, marsupial rat, kangaroo, wombat, bandicoot. There are a lot of marsupials, Australians, which are different from each other, but they are evolved from. That means they are physically or they are morphologically are different, but they are evolved from the ancestral stock. So adaptive gradations occur in the isolated geographical area. That means this is an example of this. If you see the marsupials in Australia, Australia is also another land, continent. It is a separated and it is surrounded by the water. So it is a isolated. That means the adaptive gradations occur in the isolated geographical area. Now the next is the placental marsupials in the Australia. Now we will see in the placental marsupials is also existing in that same area in Australia. That placenta wolf and Tasmania wolf, that is also an example of this adaptive gradation. Now next is the biological evolution. So evolution by the natural selection, as the Darwinians said that the evolution by the natural selection, that means by the nature, the survival for the fittest, one who is able to adapt with their surrounding, they can be survive and they can produce a more progeny. That was the theory which was given by the Darwin, and that is known as evolution by natural selection is essence of Darwinian theory. And the rate of appear of new forms is linked to their life cycle. If the new forms, new species arise, it is somehow linked to the life cycle also. Life cycle means their lifespan is maybe 10 days, maybe 1 year, maybe 1 month, maybe 6 months, maybe many years. Okay, so similarly, suppose we are just growing the microbes in the medium, and a single microbe will start dividing into it, and when it starts dividing, it gives a millions of microbes are grown within the 1 hour. So that is the rapid process. That means these microbes can grow in a culture medium in large numbers or million in numbers in a 1 hour. On the other hand, the bacteria, when we grow in a medium, it will be grow like this. Okay, I have indicated this is a slide A or plate A in which we will find the microbes are growing. But on the other hand, if we change the medium, okay, if we change the medium, then we will find that the population which is present in the medium A is more as compared to the B, because you have changed the medium, and because changing in the medium, some of the microbes are able to, some of the bacteria are able to survive at the new conditions. Okay, so that means the B having the more resistance, but their population is somehow lesser than A. So variant population outgrow others and new species appear. So that means this is the variant, that means this is the population which is grown in changing in the medium, and the new species are appear. Example of the fish and fowl, it takes million years as a lifespans in a year. That means if the changes which is occur in the fowl and the fishes, it take million years. That means many years it takes to somehow, because it depends upon their lifespans. So fitness of the bee is better than the A. So when we see that which one is the fitter, bacteria A or bacteria B, we find the B is a better than. So the based on the characters, they are inherited, that is a genetic base. That means this one having the variations, and these variations are genetic, it is inherited. When it is inherited, then it is adapted and gets selected by the nature. That means when it is inherited, that means variation is existing, that variation is genetically based, and then it is adapted and the nature was selected by it. Okay, now the branching, descent and natural selection, these are the two keys point or factors which the Darwin gave. But before Darwin, the French naturalist Lamarck said that the evolution of the life, that means why the evolution is occur, the evolution of life is driven by the use and the disuse of the organ. Whether any organ is used, it is evolve unless no. So he has given the example of the giraffe. In the olden days, the giraffe having a short neck, and he said that at the time it has a short neck because they can easily feed the they can easily eat or graze the grasses and the medium-sized plants. But later on, when there is a shortage of food, it starts stretching their neck, and due to this, its neck get elongated. So it was refused by it because it's having no fact, that means use and disuse of an organ will be evaluated by the life. So now next is the evolution is a process or a result of process. Now it's a big debate whether this evolution is a process or the result, that means the end of the process, or you can say the product. So story of the world, when we have studied in the earlier first lecture, that means how the life is formed, how this earth is formed, how the galaxy is formed. So that is the story of world. When we study the story of world, it is evolve as a process. We said that whole process is occur. So this is a process, how the earth is formed, how it cooled down, how the gases are formed, how the galaxies are formed, like this. But when we talk about the story of life, how the life is formed, that means we have discussed from it is exists from the inorganic contents or inorganic materials, and story of this life. So this evolve the consequences of the process of natural selection. So there is a debate that when we study the story of world, that is an evolve as a process, but when we study the story of life, how the life is formed, it is evolve as a consequences of the process of natural selection. That means it was the result of natural selection. Okay, so it's a debate on all, but Thomas Malthus said that the natural selection is based on certain observation. That means whatever selection is occurring, survival for the fittest and all, the observation which he found, or that was a factual. He said that the natural resources, in the earlier we have studied that the population is grow exponentially. He said that the natural resources in a particular area on the earth is limited, and the population size is stable. It always remains stable, and maybe it will be fluctuate only, it's seasonable. Maybe when there is a heavy rainfall, when there is a landslide, when there is a flood. So out of this, there is a fluctuation seasonable, or maybe the immigrant or migrants, birds will be arrived. So that is the chance of population instability. Third thing is that the members of population vary in the characters. When we see the population's members, we find that they are varying in their characteristics. No two members or individuals are similar. Somehow they are having the variation. So superficially, similarly, most variation inherited. So by seeing, we can say that these are the birds. Superficially they are similar, but variation is inherited. So theoretically, population size grow exponentially, but really population size is limited. Okay, so we said that later on we will study that it will be exponentially raised like this. But it somehow is wrong. Our population never raised exponentially. It is limited in nature. Means no competition for the resources. Means there is always a competition for the resources. More population, more need of food, shelter and survival. So that means more competition is occur. So the resources are limited for us. Now next is the mechanism of evolution. How this mechanism is occur. So there is a origin of variations. Now nowadays we say that the origin of variation and the speciation is occur. How does this speciation is occur? The Darwin ignored the Mendel's factor, because Mendel said that there is an inherited factor which is inherited from one species to other, but Darwin ignored that. And on the first decade of 20th century, the Hugo de Veres, he did the work on the evening primrose, and he found the mutation in it. And he said that the large differences in the population. So when he did the experiment on that, he found that there is a large variation in the population. He said that the mutation is a cause of speciation. Speciation means single step large mutation, and in the single step there is a large mutation that is known as saltation. But the mutations causes the evolution and not minor variations. And he said that the mutation, that means this mutation, these changes and variation in the genetic makeup of an organism can cause the evolution, and that evolution is not a minor variation. But on the other hand, Darwin said that mutation is a random, that means any time it can be occur. It is directionless, that means we never know in which direction the evolution will be occur. Okay, and the variation is small and direction and gradual evolution. He said that the variation is very small and it is a direction and gradual, that means slowly the evolution will be occur. But on the other hand, the Hugo de Veres is against of that. He said that the mutation is a random and directionless, it is large and it will be causes a variation, and maybe it is a single step large mutation, saltation, which causes the mutations and causes the formation of speciations or formation of species. So this is all about this, and in the next lecture we will study the next topic of the evolution. Hope you understood. Please go through the textbook. It will help you a lot, because homologous, analogous and natural selection that are the important topics of this chapter. Thank you.